In his pre-West Ham press conference, Eddie Howe said he didn't know when Yoane Wissa would be returning from injury. Is this lack of clarity a concern? In this video, we're going to be answering that question and also discussing who will start at the London Stadium on Sunday. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Before we get going, as usual, please do hit that subscribe button and also join me on Patreon if you would so like. There's a link in the description. $2.99 a month for supporters. You get ad-free versions of these videos, and $4.99 a month after a 7-day free trial gets you extra content, including pre-match and post-match reactions from St James's Park when I'm at the games, and also player ratings as well, plus much more once the audience grows. So please do get involved if you would like to. But today we're going to be focusing on Yoane Wissa, with Eddie Howe not confirming when Yoane Wissa will be back. For context, he was supposed to be out for 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury after arriving from Brentford on deadline day, getting injured DR Congo on international duty, and that 6 to 8 weeks window would have meant he would be back for Brighton potentially, but also definitely back for West Ham. West Ham was one of the games that he was definitely earmarked for. Then came that setback that was supposed to be only a couple of weeks, but with no clearer on whether Yoane Wissa will be back at any point soon. And Eddie Howe said it could be, he doesn't feel like he's close to returning to training with the team, and then obviously off the back of that it's going to be some time before he gets on the pitch at all. Then you add in the context that because the injury and because of the fact that he came in late and he's not had a pre-season, remember he also acted like Alexander Isak did in the summer, not training at Brentford, and that has been a big thing that Newcastle fans have pointed at Alexander Isak for his poor form at the start of the season, but it's played into the lack of preparation that Wissa's had. Whether it played into his injury, I certainly don't know, but it's not helped his cause generally in this situation, so he deserves a little bit of criticism for that. But it's going to be some time until Wissa is at all capable, I think, of even getting on the pitch, and then Eddie Howe says 6 weeks in pre-season, as I mentioned, to get up to speed and be able to really contribute on a regular basis and be consistent. And that is a bit of a concern, especially when you add into the fact that the AFCON's coming up in December and January, and that means that he won't be around for that if he goes there. There has been a bit of talk that he may not go there, so we'll see. Obviously, we discussed that a few weeks ago. We'll see whether that actually comes to fruition, but it has been a nightmare start for Wissa at Newcastle. And also, you've got to remember the context around this. Newcastle wanted to buy him for £25-30 million because he's only got 1 year on his contract at Brentford with the extension option of a second on top of that. And then they ended up buying him for £55 million, which I think everybody thought they could stomach if he came in and instantly hit the ground running and scored lots of goals from the very start, which obviously he's not been able to do. The saving grace in this obviously is that Nick Voltemada has done exactly that, 6 goals for Newcastle so far this season. And it's very ironic really when you consider the fact that Newcastle were really looking for Premier League proven players to hit the ground running, no need to adapt. And Voltemada, and by extension as well, Malik Chow in defence, are the 2 players who've really done that. And you look at Wissa and you look at Anthony Elanga for different reasons, but they've had faltering starts at Newcastle, and they are supposed to be the 2 big money players who are supposed to hit the ground running. It isn't Wissa's fault that he got injured, but it has been a very frustrating situation, and we don't know the situation yet. He said he wasn't trying to be evasive. Obviously, you've got to take what Eddie Howe says in press conferences with a pinch of salt, but he said he wouldn't be involved on Sunday against West Ham. Obviously, there's Athletic Club in the Champions League, but if he's not back in training this week, he's not going to be involved in that, and I wonder if he's even going to be involved back at Brentford. That would be some debut if he made it there, but it's a bit concerning to me that we're getting to this stage of the season and there's still no clarity on when he's going to be training and when that 6-week period of pre-season, in inverted commas, is going to start for him, because Eddie Howe has said that he will play in that 6 weeks, but he's not going to be at his sharpest. And we've seen, with Isak at Liverpool, how much that's impacted him. It's going to be very similar, I think, for Wissa. And again, you add in the context. I've written a piece on this for Forbes, by the way. It's in the description. I've done a little bit of analysis on Eddie Howe's quotes and the current situation with Wissa. And when you throw in the fact that, he had a year on his contract and he's going to be going to the AFCON, when is it that Newcastle are going to get the valuation out of this player? It always felt a little bit impossible. If you remember going back to my rankings video, that was reason why I put Wissa quite low down on the rankings. I think he's a fantastic player. Obviously scored 19 Premier League goals on paper. He's a wonderful addition. He's exactly what Newcastle have been missing this start of the season, as well as Voltemade has done. We've obviously talked so much about his connection with the wingers and the transitional phase of Newcastle this season, because they've gone away from a box player who plays on the shoulder, gets in the right areas, to somebody who holds back and links the play a bit more. Wissa is that sort of continuation of the off-the-shoulder poacher-type goal scorer that could have come in handy at the start of this season and hasn't been able to. And Newcastle have got to be thankful that Voltemade has found his feet the way he has, but I think it would have been very, very helpful to have Wissa there to be off the bench or to come in and start certain games as well. And that debate that we had right at the end of the transfer window about who would start more games, who would come in from the very start, and then Wissa gets injured. And there were talks about ACL injuries and potentially really difficult situations Newcastle were going to face. And they have had obviously a £6 million compensation from FIFA because of his injuries as well. But it isn't as bad as that. Yet Newcastle are still facing this situation where heading into November, he is not even fit enough to train, and then he's going to take that 6 weeks, and then by that point he may well go off to the AFCON. He's 29 as well. There's no guarantee that you can come back from that sort of injury at that age and be as sharp as you were. And the other bit of frustration around this whole thing is that he didn't have any injuries at Brentford. I think he missed a total of 8 games in 4 seasons there with injuries. So the whole thing's been very frustrating. Are you concerned by the lack of clarity over his return, given the situation? And there is a little bit of context. Obviously, he doesn't have a history of huge injuries that Brentford's doctors could maybe share with Newcastle on terms of information on how you come to the conclusion over a return date. And also, Newcastle and the medical team don't have that rapport with Wissa. And Eddie Howe was speaking about how he's had to adapt into Newcastle a little bit in the background, kind of similar, he didn't mention this, but kind of similar to Sandro Tonali effectively. When he was out with his ban, most of his integration came on the training ground, and obviously Wissa hasn't been on the pitch yet, but getting involved with the squad, that's going to be difficult to do up to a point, but hopefully we'll be able to hit the ground running when he comes back. But the trouble I have with it is that we were told that there was an 8-week potential wait for him to come back, and then there was that setback that was a couple of weeks. Now we're in that spell where we're entering that extra couple of weeks. Are we going to see him against Manchester City? That hasn't been mentioned. And then, as I say, after that 6 weeks, suddenly you're looking at the AFCON. There has been talks that he may not go, but it's very, very difficult for Newcastle to come out of this in a positive way over Wissa, and the only saving grace is obviously that Nick Voltemade has been doing really well this season, and also Will Asula as well. But Wissa could have helped also the transition, I think, between Isak and Voltemade. I think we've seen that issue with him linking up with the wingers, and there was a good point made on the True Faith podcast I was on this week, saying that, Elanga, for example, how much he struggled. He was brought in to sort of play with Isak, who's a very different type of striker, someone who was going to get into those areas so he could just cross it and he would get to the end of them. That hasn't been the case with Voltemade. That's got to be a different sort of dynamic that suddenly Elanga and Gordon and Barnes, but particularly Elanga, who was brought in for something different, has got to adapt to, and it's going to take time. With Wissa being there, maybe that could have been an easier transition, although of course I am speculating. But let me know in the comment section below if you are concerned over the current situation with Wissa, the lack of clarity over his return date, and how long it's going to take for him to be back up to speed at Newcastle. We're also going to talk more about the West Ham game as well. It's obviously Newcastle have not won away from home since Leicester at the back end of last season. I think it's 7 games with 1 goal. Whatever the stats were after the Brighton game, I haven't rechecked them, but it's a really, really poor situation for them away from. Obviously they've just gone 3 clean sheets as well, which hopefully Newcastle will get back on that particular horse against a really, really out of form, out of sorts West Ham side, who just look so gettable. They look so beatable in midfield. They don't have any energy, but also they're very, very slow at the back as well. And you would imagine that Voltemade pulling that defence out of position would allow the wingers to get in behind. Here is my first 11, and it's back to the strongest team on form that Newcastle can pick this season so far, and that's Nick Pope in goal, Burn at left back, Botman and Chow in the centre back positions. Obviously there has been a lot of debate whether Fabian Schär keeps his place after that goal in the midweek, but I think Botman, if he's fit and ready to come back in after his cut last week, he should come back in. But obviously there are options there for Eddie Howe, which is good to see. Trippier back in at right back, and then in the midfield, the midfield three should be as it is: Tonali, Joe Linton over Ramsey. Despite last week saying Ramsey, I think in this game, the physicality, the way to impose yourself away from home in transition as well, this game will really suit Joe Linton. It's a good way to get on top of West Ham, frustrate them, upset any rhythm that they may be looking to develop, and really get into them. So I think Joe Linton's a really good option in there, and then obviously Bruno, and then I would go for Murphy on one side, Gordon on the other, and Nick Voltemade up front. I think Elanga, as I've just mentioned, has had some trouble. I think he isn't the man to pick for league games at the moment. Murphy and Gordon did fairly well last week, particularly Gordon. Initially I thought he was quite poor against Fulham. Watched it back and thought about it, and I actually think he was quite good, so he'll keep his place. And then Elanga maybe will come in for Athletic during the week, but a really good opportunity to get that first away win, an important opportunity as well. These two games could be a bit of a hinge for the season, I think, because Newcastle need to improve their away form against two teams that are expected to be in that sort of bottom sort of 5-6 teams as well. Newcastle need to really go and impose themselves. If they have any serious thoughts of top four, and they absolutely should this season, they need to be back in that Champions League conversation every season. They need to go and win these games. But let me know what you think against a really poor West Ham side. What's your first 11? Drop them down in the comment section below. And also, what are your thoughts on Yoane Wissa's situation? Are you as concerned as I am as well over the lack of clarity and the situation? Because it could be coming out of winter at the start of 2026 till he really hits the ground running for Newcastle, off the back of what has been a huge outlay that just doesn't look like it's a good signing at the moment. Through no fault of anybody, it's a very, very difficult situation. Like, share and subscribe, and there's a link to Patreon down below as well if you'd like to take a look at that. And I'll see you for a review on Sunday. Cheers.